What if the company that many analysts wrote off as having peaked has just delivered one of the most compelling financial signals we've seen in the consumer technology space this year? Apple has once again defied the skeptics. The company's revenue guidance has come in above Wall Street estimates, and the driving forces behind this are two product lines that form the very backbone of Apple's empire: the iPhone and the Mac. Let's dig into what this actually means, because there's a lot more beneath the surface here than a simple beat on a quarterly forecast. First, the iPhone. We've been hearing for years that smartphone saturation would eventually catch up with Apple, that the upgrade cycles would lengthen, that consumers would hold on to their devices longer and simply stop reaching for their wallets. And yet, here we are. iPhone demand is booming. The question any serious analyst has to ask is why now, and why this strongly? Part of the answer likely lies in Apple's aggressive push into artificial intelligence features through Apple Intelligence, which has given consumers in key markets a genuine reason to upgrade. If your current iPhone doesn't support the latest AI capabilities, suddenly that 2-year-old device feels considerably more obsolete. Apple has, with remarkable precision, engineered desire back into its flagship product. Then there's the Mac. This is the story that deserves perhaps even more attention, because Mac growth at this scale is genuinely surprising. The transition to Apple Silicon that began a few years ago with the M1 chip fundamentally changed the competitive positioning of Apple's computer lineup. The latest M-series chips are delivering performance benchmarks that compete with and often surpass machines costing significantly more. What we're seeing now is potentially the payoff of that multi-year architectural shift. Consumers and professionals who were sitting on older Intel-based machines are now making the move, and they're doing it in numbers that are meaningfully impacting revenue guidance. Now, let's talk about the broader economic context here, because this is where the analysis gets genuinely interesting. We are operating in an environment where consumer spending has been under pressure, where inflation has bitten into discretionary budgets, where interest rates have made big purchases feel heavier. And yet Apple is seeing booming demand. This speaks to something fundamental about the brand's pricing power and customer loyalty that no competitor has been able to replicate at scale. Apple customers are, in economic terminology, highly inelastic. They want the product, and they find a way to get it. There's also a geographic dimension worth examining. Apple's performance in markets like India, where the company has been aggressively expanding its retail presence and manufacturing footprint, is increasingly moving the needle on global numbers. This isn't just a story about American consumers buying iPhones. This is about Apple successfully executing a long-term emerging market strategy that is now beginning to materially show up in its financial results. What does this guidance beat signal for the broader technology sector? When Apple, the largest consumer hardware company on the planet, tells you that demand is stronger than expected, that's not just a company-specific story. That's a data point about consumer confidence, about the health of the premium end of the market, and about the continuing willingness of global consumers to prioritize technology in their spending. Wall Street will recalibrate. Price targets will move. But the more important question for investors, for industry observers, and frankly for anyone watching where technology is heading, is whether this momentum is sustainable or whether we're looking at a concentrated surge that will normalize in coming quarters. Apple has a long history of making the skeptics look foolish. And right now, the numbers suggest they're doing exactly that again. The real story isn't that Apple beat estimates, it's that in a complicated world, people still desperately want what Apple is selling.